We came to the rooming house where Neil haggled with Carolyn. It was an old red brick building surrounded by wooden garages and old trees that stuck up from behind fences. We went up carpeted stairs. Alan knocked. Then he darted back to hide. He didn't want Carolyn to see it was him who knocked. I stood in the door. Neil opened it, stark naked. I saw Carolyn on the bed, one beautiful creamy thigh covered with black lace, a blonde look up with mild wonder. "Why, Jack," said Neil. "Well, now, of course, you've arrived, you old son of a bitch. You finally got on that old road. Well, now look here, we must, yes, at once, we really must. Now, Carolyn," and he swirled on her, "Jack is here. This is my old buddy from New York. This is his first night in Denver, and it's absolutely necessary for me to take him out and fix him up with a girl. But what time will you be back?" "It is now," looking at his watch, "exactly 1:14. I shall be back at exactly 3:14 for our hour of reverie together, real sweet reverie, darling. And then, as you know, I told you, and as we agreed, I have to go and see Brierly about those papers in the middle of the night, strange as it seems, as I too roughly explained. This was a cover-up for his rendezvous with Alan, who was still hiding. So now, in this exact minute, I must dress, put on my pants, go back to life, that is outside life, streets and whatnot, as we agreed. It is now 1:15, and time's running. Well, all right, Neil, but please be sure and be back at 3, just as I said, darling, and remember, not 3, but 3:14. Are we straight in the deepest, most wonderful depths of our souls, dear darling?" And he went over and kissed her several times. On the wall was a new drawing of Neil, enormous dangle and all, done by Carolyn. I was amazed. Everything was so crazy, and I still had San Francisco to make. Off we rushed into the night. Alan joined us in an alley, and as we proceeded down the narrowest, strangest, and most crooked little street I've ever seen deep in the heart of Denver, Mexican town, we walked in loud voices in the sleeping stillness. "Jack," said Neil, "I have just the girl waiting for you at this very minute, if she is off duty," looked at his watch. "A nurse, Helen Goulion, fine chick, slightly hung up on a few sexual difficulties, which I've tried to straighten up, and I think you can manage, you fine god daddy, you. So we'll go there at once, throw a pebble. No, we'll ring the bell. I know how to get in. We must bring beer. No, they have some themselves. And damn," he said, socking his palm, "I just gotta get into her sister Ruth tonight." "What?" said Alan. "I thought we were gonna talk." Yes, after." "Oh, these Denver doldrums," yelled Alan to the sky. "Isn't he the finest, sweetest fellow in the world?" said Neil, punching me in the ribs. Look at him. And Alan began his monkey dance in the streets of life, as I'd seen him do so many times everywhere in New York, and all I could say was, "Well, what the hell are we doing in Denver?" "Tomorrow, Jack, I know where I can find you a job," said Neil, reverting to business-like tones. "So I can call on you. And as soon as I have an hour off from Luann, cut right off into that apartment of yours, say hello to Temco, and take you on a trolley, damn, I've no car, to the Denargo markets, where you can begin working at once and collect a paycheck come Friday. We're really all of us bottomly broke. I haven't time to work in weeks. Friday night, beyond all doubt, the three of us, the old threesome, Alan, Neil, Jack, must go to the midget auto races, and for that, I can get us a ride from our guy downtown. I know." And on into the night. We got to the hospital dormitory where the nurse sisters lived. The one for me was still on duty. The sister that Neil wanted was in. We sat down on her couch. I was scheduled at this time to call Bob Burford. I did. He came rushing over at once. Coming in the door, he took off his shirt and undershirt and began hugging the absolute stranger, Ruth Goulion. Bottles rolled on the floor. 3 o'clock came. Neil rushed off for his hour of reverie with Carolyn. He was back on time. The other sister showed up. We all needed a car now. We were making too much noise. Bob Burford called up a buddy with a car. He came. We all piled in. Alan was trying to conduct his scheduled talk with Neil in the back seat, but there was too much confusion. "Let's all go to my apartment," I shouted. We did. The moment the car stopped there, I jumped out and I stood on my head in the grass. All my keys fell out. I haven't found them since. We rushed shouting into the apartment. Alan Temco stood barring our way in his silk dressing gown. "I'll have no goings-on like this in Ed White's apartment." "What?" we all shouted. There was confusion. Burford was rolling in the grass with one of the nurses. Temco wouldn't let us in. We swore to call Ed White and confirm the party and also invite him. Instead, we all rushed back to Denver downtown bars and nothing came of it. I suddenly found myself alone in the street with no money. My last dollar was gone. I walked 5 miles up Colfax to my comfortable bed in the apartment. Temco had to let me in. I wondered if Neil and Alan were having their heart-to-heart. I'd find out later. The nights in Denver are cool. I slept like a log. Then everybody began planning a tremendous trek to the mountains en masse. This news came in the morning, together with a phone call that complicated matters. My old road friend Eddie took a blind chance and called. Now I had the opportunity to get my shirt back. Eddie was with his girl in a house off Colfax. He wanted to know if I knew where to find work, and I told him to come over, figuring Neil would know. Neil arrived hurrying. Temco and I were having a hasty breakfast that I always cooked. Neil wouldn't even sit down. I have 1,000 things to do. In fact, hardly any time to take you down to Denargo, but let's go, man. Wait for my road buddy, Eddie. Temco found our hurrying troubles amusing. He'd come to Denver to write leisurely. He treated Neil with extreme deference. Neil paid no attention. Temco never dreamed Neil in a few years would become such a great writer, or even that anyone would ever write his story as I am now. He talked to Neil like this: Cassidy, what's this I hear about you screwing 3 girls at the same time? And Neil shuffled on the rug and said, oh yes, that's the way it goes, and looked at his watch, and Temco stuffed down his nose. I felt sheepish running off with Neil. Temco insisted he was a moron and a fool. Of course he wasn't, and I wanted to prove it to everybody somehow. We met Eddie. Neil paid no attention to him either, and off we went to the trolley across the hot Denver noon to find jobs. I hated the thought of it. Eddie talked and talked like he always did. We found a man in the markets who agreed to hire both of us. Work started at 4 o'clock in the morning and went till 6. The man said, I like boys who like to work. You've got your man, said Eddie. But I wasn't so sure about myself. I just won't sleep, I decided. There were so many other interesting things to do. Eddie showed up the next morning. I didn't.